Part 1.
You will hear a conversation between a police officer and a woman who witnessed an accident.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Hello, madam. I understand you witnessed the accident. Have you got a few minutes to tell me what you saw?
Yes, no problem. I don't have to be back at work for a while, so I'm pleased to help.
Did you actually see what happened?
Yes, I was standing over there, near the bus stop. I was on my way to get something for lunch and just happened to be looking at a shop across the road. That's when I saw the red car come out from the junction over there.
You don't happen to know what time it occurred, do you?
Well, I left work for my lunch break at 1, and it's only about 10 minutes walk away, the office, I mean. So it might have been about 10 past 1. Although I did pop into the shop for something, so it was probably closer to 1:15.
So it pulled out of Monk's Road, that's the road over there, straight onto High Street.
That's right, yes.
Did you get a view of who was in the car?
There were 3 of them. 2 in the front, the driver of course, someone in the passenger seat, and there was someone in the back. They were quite young. I doubt if they were much older than 20. Anyway, they came speeding out of the side road over there and hit that lady's bicycle. The driver didn't bother to stop to find out if she was okay. He just drove off along the main road towards the town centre. Is the woman okay?
She should be fine. She banged her head when she came off the bike, so we've called for an ambulance. They always like to check you out in case you have concussion. But no, she seems fine.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
The bike doesn't look too good, though. I don't think she'll be using that again. I suppose she was very lucky, really. If they'd hit her instead of the front wheel, she could have been seriously injured. It looked like they were just in a hurry and didn't want to stop at the junction. I know the traffic lights aren't working there, so perhaps they thought they could just pull out.
Could you give me a description of the car? Do you know the make and model?
Well, I'm not very good with cars, but I'm pretty sure it was the same model as my husband's car, a Ford Fiesta. It was red, like I said, and quite old, and the door on the driver's side was damaged. It looked like it had been in another accident some time ago.
I don't suppose you had a chance to take down the registration number, did you?
I did, actually. Let me see. Y48BYW. Will that help you trace them?
That's really helpful. It depends. It might be a stolen car, but at least we'll be able to trace the owner. If it wasn't stolen, then yes, we'll be able to find out the name of the driver. Now, would you mind giving me your contact details, just in case we need to get in touch about anything?
Of course.
What's your name? Mrs.
Stansfield. Rita Stansfield. That's Stansfield.
And your address, Mrs. Stansfield?
19 Althorpe Road, Bradford. That's ALTHORPE.
Have you got a telephone number we can get you on?
Yes, it's 0232 566 788.
And do you have a mobile number?
Yes, 07834 889 772.
That's great, Mrs. Stansfield. As I said, we may get in touch if we need any further information, but probably what you've told me is enough. Thanks for your time.
No problem. I'm glad to have been of help.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear part of a radio programme in which the manager of the Apollo Leisure Centre is interviewed about the centre. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen to the first part of the interview and answer questions 11 to 16.
Next, I'd like to welcome Carol Brown, manager of the Apollo Leisure Centre. Carol, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Carol, the Apollo seems a familiar sight, but how long has it actually been here?
Well, we started negotiations to take over the previous Active Life Centre that used to occupy the premises in 2000 and planned to open in 2001, although the usual delays meant it was 2002 before we were up and running.
And do you have quite a mix of members, or are you focused on certain groups?
It's pretty broad, actually. There are something like 200 adult members, so that's our biggest group, but we also have as many as 100 youth members, together with about 50 family group members. And I think we'll see that section growing to 100 over the next couple of years.
Healthy numbers.
Yes, and we'll be developing the centre to make it even more attractive. We're hoping eventually to build in a rock climbing wall, which would make a useful addition. We've already opened our swimming pool, which is hugely popular, and we'll have a massage room open within 12 months.
Now, I understand you have different categories of membership?
Yes, to suit every pocket. Blue membership includes all facilities for the member and a guest at all times, which is good for people with unpredictable timetables. If you can make it during daytime hours, red membership gives you excellent returns for your fee. As for only half price, you can use all the facilities during the day, and they're actually less crowded then. Green membership is designed for people who are only able to come infrequently, and so, of course, costs less.
And there are chances to socialise?
Oh, certainly. Our cafe is very popular and is a nice place to wind down and chat after working out or whatever. In fact, while it used to shut at 8, we've extended that to 9 now, with last orders taken at 8:30. It serves a whole range of food and drink.
So if someone wants to join, what do they do?
Come and see us. We'll give you all the details. The induction process takes about an hour and a quarter, which includes 3/4 of an hour on average with a personal trainer and something like half an hour being shown round the different facilities.
So we'd be well looked after?
Definitely.
Now you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the interview and answer questions 17 to 20.
OK, now, Carol, can you give us some idea of what we could expect to get as members of Apollo?
Sure. Well, let's take next Monday as an example. The early evening would begin with the programme of classes. Of course, members would also be at liberty to do their own thing. I'm just talking about the listed classes that we'll be offering. So let's say you're free to turn up at 4 p.m. You could spend an hour in a class that we call gentle exercise. This isn't a hard workout, as you might be imagining it, but a session designed for those who perhaps are not used to rigorous classes and would like something to ease them in.
Right.
The next thing on offer will be starting at 5, and again, it'll last for an hour. In contrast, this is what we simply call weightlifting. It's certainly not for softies, but this strenuous session is, of course, carefully monitored, and we wouldn't let anyone do anything silly.
Oh, well, that's reassuring.
And then, kicking off at 6:15, you'll be welcome at a class aimed at promoting better lifestyles, which we run under the banner of healthy living. We'll give you all sorts of useful advice about just living better.
Oh, sounds easier than working out.
And probably at least as important.
And rounds the evening off nicely.
Oh no, we still have one more offering.
Oh.
These days, so many people are working, frankly, more than they should be. And we try to combat the stress that creates by encouraging those who can to take part in the class we call relaxation. You can learn lots of helpful techniques for staying calm when you think everything's going terribly.
Now you're talking.
So we'll see you on Monday.
Now...
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a discussion between two work colleagues and their manager about the restructuring of their company. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Come in, both of you. I believe you wanted to talk to me about something, is that right?
Yes. Basically, all the staff are concerned about what the restructuring of the company is going to mean for them. None more so than myself and Nam, as we are the newest members.
As I said to all staff at the meeting last week, there's no cause for concern. There will be no compulsory redundancies. All redundancies will be on a voluntary basis.
Yes, we understand that, but to tell the truth, we just want a little reassurance that our jobs are safe.
Look, Anne and Penny, the company isn't going to be short-sighted and let its bright young minds go. Besides, we've already met our target for the number of voluntary redundancies we want to secure. In fact, there's a waiting list. You know as well as I do that the age profile of staff at this company needs to come down. A lot of our employees are close to retirement age and are just going through the motions until they can take their pensions. That's why we decided on this redundancy initiative. We want to encourage those that would be happy to leave to do so and employ younger, more motivated staff.
I guess that makes us feel a little better, but we're also worried about the upcoming salary review. What will it mean for us?
Given the fact that the company's motivation for this restructuring initiative is not to cut costs, you needn't be worried that there will be a negative effect on your salaries. We are running a very profitable business and we will reward our top performers in the upcoming review. Both of you fall into that category, so you can expect a healthy bonus and salary increase. Simple as that.
That's good to know. Another thing on our minds was the fact that with all these voluntary redundancies happening in the next few months, there will be a lot of positions opening up higher in the company. What we were wondering is, will the recruitment drive be an internal or an external one?
Obviously, we will recruit internally where possible. That has always been company policy. So, if you're asking me will there be opportunities to gain a promotion in the near future, then the answer is very definitely yes. The type of candidate we would be looking for has a proven track record and is performance-driven.
How can we improve our chances of getting promoted then when the opportunity arises?
Well, in the meantime, be prepared to take on additional responsibilities, especially those relating to the management of other members of staff. Obviously, the higher up you go in the company, the more involved you'll be in managing people. What the management team is looking for then is proof that you can work effectively with and manage other members of staff.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
One more thing.
Go on.
This project you've given us to manage, is it a test of our abilities?
I guess you could say it is a test of sorts, but look at it more as a chance for you to prove yourselves. Actually, now that I have you both here in private, can we talk about that a bit?
Of course.
OK, Penny. Let's start with you. Has the timescale been agreed yet?
Yes. You said we have a total of 8 weeks to bring the product to launch. So we've decided to allocate 3 weeks at the beginning to product research and prototype testing.
Very good.
Then after that, we are going to spend a further 3 weeks formulating our marketing strategy and doing some research and testing on a sample of the target market itself to get some feedback.
And presumably the last 2 weeks will be devoted to the launch?
Exactly.
Now, let's talk estimated costs.
Well, you've given us a total budget of £100,000. Of that, we're allocating 50% to product development and testing, a further 25% to marketing, and £25,000 will be spent on the launch.
Penny, give me a breakdown of the launch costs, would you?
Sure. £10,000 will be spent on hiring and decorating the venue, £10,000 will be spent on promotional work, and the remaining money will be used to pay for catering and administrative costs.
I'm very happy with that, to be honest. As I said, you guys should stop worrying. You're doing a fantastic job, so keep it up.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear Rebecca Bramwell, an artist and illustrator, giving advice on how to get your first job or commission as an artist. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 35. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 35.
I'd like to introduce Rebecca Bramwell, an artist and illustrator who has come along today to talk to you all about getting your first job or commission as an artist. Over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you for inviting me. I remember when I graduated back in 1983, I was very excited about getting my first commission. My degree was in fine art and I'd worked long and hard to get it. I was an enthusiastic student and I never found it difficult to find the incentive to paint. I think as a student you're pushed along by fellow students and tutors and the driving force is there. However, when you leave college, you find yourself saying things like, I'll have one more cup of coffee and then I'll sit down to work. I hate to admit it, but I say it myself. Suddenly, it isn't finding the inspiration or getting the right paper that's a problem. It's you. In my view, there are a number of reasons why this happens. It's a real challenge making a decent living as a new artist. You have to find a market for your work. Often you work freelance and need to take samples or portfolios of your work from place to place. These experiences are common to a lot of professional people. But artists also have to bare their souls to the world, in a way. More than anything, they want praise. If people don't like what they create, then it can be a very emotional and upsetting experience hearing them say this. I began to realise that these problems were preventing me from having a career in art, and so I decided to experiment. I was a painter, but I started to dabble in illustration, drawing pictures for books, cards, and this offered me the opportunity to become more emotionally detached from my work. I was no longer producing images from the heart, but developing images for a specified subject, taking a more practical approach. I began to develop a collection of my illustrations, which I put into a portfolio and started to carry around with me to show prospective clients and employers. But it was still tricky because publishers, for example, want to know that your drawings will reproduce well in a book. But without having had any work published, it's hard to prove this. Having a wonderful portfolio or a collection of original artwork is, of course, a first step. But what most potential clients would like to see is printed artwork, and without this evidence, they tend to hold back still when it comes to offering a contract.
Look at questions 36 to 40. Now answer questions 36 to 40.
Well, I overcame this problem in two ways. And I suppose this is my advice to you on preparing your portfolio of your best work. The first way was by submitting my work for a competition. And the one I chose was for a horoscope design and was sponsored by a top women's magazine. There are a few of these competitions each year, and they offer new illustrators an opportunity to showcase their work. The other approach I took was to design and print some mock-up pages of a book. In other words, I placed some of my illustrations next to some text in order to demonstrate how my work would look when it was printed. Perhaps I was lucky in that I had taken a degree that provided me with all-round creative skills so that I could vary my style and wasn't limited to a certain technique. Now, I think that is important. The art world and many other creative fields do try to pigeonhole people into snug boxes with an accompanying label. Now, I think you should try to resist this if you feel it happening to you. If you don't, you'll find it difficult to have new work accepted if you try to develop your style at a later stage in your career. Nevertheless, when you start out, and particularly when you're going for an interview, it's important not to confuse people by having a lot of different examples in your portfolio. One remedy for this is to separate your work into distinct categories. In my case, I did this by dividing my design-inspired illustrations from my paintings. It's then easier to analyse the market suited to each portfolio, such as magazines, book jackets, CD covers, etc. Working under two names is also useful, as it clarifies the different approaches and offers a distinction between them. I think it's been hard for artists to be recognised in anything other than the pigeonholes that they've been placed in. But luckily, these barriers are slowly being demolished. So I really do wish you all the very...
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.